did you get involved in this? How did you first hear about it?
So actually, I was going to county meetings to fight wind turbines. And I ran into these two older women that were fighting the pipeline. And we have pipelines on one of our farms. I didn't think much of it. You know, I get along with the pipeline company just fine. So I started doing some research, and the farther I dug, the worse it got. The safety is a real issue with CO2, but my real problem from my economic background is the financial side of they're essentially stealing the CO2 out of our state. They're going to do something with it to generate profit. Why would we allow them to do that outside of our state? I'm not against pipelines in general. I am against this pipeline. I don't believe this pipeline is safe. I'm very suspect of a new company without a track record doing this type of project. That's scary in my mind. But the bigger thing is, from an economic standpoint, this is a disaster for the state of Iowa. I mean, they are literally, their business model is to take a valuable commodity and have the government pay them to put it in a landfill. There's no production here. There's no benefit to the public. There's nothing that if the government says we're not going to do this anymore, the only thing you would be left with is, well, we could possibly use it for fracking. But the way the rules are set up, if you use it for fracking, then the ethanol plants get no benefit out of it. I often say that, you know, DC is where dumb ideas go to get financing, because if it was intelligent, the marketplace would take care of it. You create wealth by adding value to natural resources. And that's what our state needs to do, is add value to all of our natural resources. And CO2 is actually one of the very valuable resources that we have. The CO2 is 98% pure. And industry standard for CO2 is 10 to 12%. So this is like the holy grail of CO2. It's very valuable. We currently have people drilling for naturally occurring hydrogen. And if we are able to get naturally occurring hydrogen, the last projection I saw was 65 cents per kilogram would be our cost for naturally occurring hydrogen. If you put that hydrogen with our pure CO2, we will have the cheapest methanol in the world. Nobody in the world would be able to produce methanol cheaper than we could. Why would we give up that opportunity? So by putting this in a pipeline, sending it as a raw material to North Dakota, hurts our prospects for creating a more viable product that adds more value to our corn crop. And so this whole pipeline is all about just producing a monopoly so that one entity essentially will control the vast majority of this 98% pure CO2. The IUB, our Iowa Utilities Board, which is now Iowa Utilities Commission, is set up to regulate industries that tend to be monopolies. And through this process, they've basically perverted this process to make it so that the IUC is creating a monopoly rather than regulating one. It's really interesting that when you go to North Dakota, the advertising that the pipeline company and the people that want the pipeline do is completely different than in Iowa. In Iowa, it's all about save ethanol. When you get to North Dakota, it's about enhanced oil recovery or fracking. They're saying we need this in order to get all the oil out of the ground that we can get. But I find it interesting if Summit is telling the people in North Dakota that we can use this CO2 for enhanced oil recovery, but yet they're telling our ethanol plants that, oh, we're going to lower your carbon index. You can't do both. even if there were an economic benefit from the pipeline, which I don't believe it is still incumbent on them to be convenient and necessary and to not inhibit economic growth of the communities that they're going through. And as you go through the state, it's almost like they drew a line from town to town to see how close they could get to them. When, I mean, this is a rural area. There are paths that they could take to stay farther away from these communities. And it truly looks as if it was intentional to see how close they could get. So Sioux City goes to the north, it goes to the county line. And to the west, it goes to the river. And to the south, it runs into Sergeant Bluff. And so the only way that Sioux City can really grow is to the east. And this pipeline comes down and it basically draws a line, and this is all the farther Sioux City can grow. So it's a stranglehold. In my county, Sioux City is by far the largest city in our county. And when you limit their ability to grow, you limit the whole county's ability to grow. They won't share their plume study. And they are claiming that there is a threat of terrorism. And I guess, are the terrorists unable to look at Google Earth? I mean, they'll be able to see, it's pretty easy to see this path that this pipeline is going to take. It's kind of strange that this is such a terrorist threat and yet it's so safe. I mean, everybody in this room owns as many miles of pipeline as Summit owns. Everybody in this room has built as many miles of pipeline as Summit has built. This is a startup company that we're allowing to build the most dangerous pipeline in the country. And the thing that I haven't seen is, what are the requirements to be able to do that? If a trucker drives into our state and at the port of entry, he has to prove that he's got the license and the knowledge to drive a truck. And I'm not seeing that Summit has that level of requirement to prove that they can actually do this pipeline. Oh, I firmly believe that this is on a global scale. Europe has been leading us in all of these things, and we've been kind of following along like a puppy dog. The idea that we aren't making our own decisions in our own government is really quite scary. I mean, my forefathers left Europe for a reason, and I don't really want to turn it back into Europe. So I think that we need more independence, but we need people to be more involved in order to get there. The first thing that I would do is go to my local government. Local governments are extremely important in this, and I was able to get Woodbury County to join another group of counties to sue the IUB to be represented in this. But the local governments have more authority than what they realize. The county sheriff is actually a very critical person in this. A big part of this issue to begin with was the fact that they were doing surveys on people's property without permission. And our county sheriff did kick Summit and Navigator off of properties when they went to do surveys. We all have a problem with, well, it's not in my backyard, it's not my problem. And we need to understand that when this precedent is set, it is all of our problems. I don't care what kind of property you own, this affects us all. I am fourth generation on 2 farms and third generation on another. It does me no good to hand that land off to my son if I'm not able to give him the property rights that go along with it. So this is very important. I mean, as a farmer, we play with a lot of dollars. Our land is worth a lot of money, but it's the rights of what you are able to do with that land. I mean, when you look at the amount of money we play with and what the land is worth, we don't make very much money. You know, we play with a lot, but the margins are very tight. And you need to have the ability to make those decisions within your own family unit rather than have somebody be able to come in and just say, this is what we're going to do. And there are other industries that are watching what's going on with the pipelines very closely with the thought process, if they can get eminent domain, so can we.